everyone! Welcome to Foreign Policy Podcast, and today we welcome Group 2 as our panelists. Before we get to know to the panelists, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Evelyn Chernando as the one who is going to moderate today's session, and here we got...
My name is Fanny Ongkowijoyo and you can call me as Fanny.
Hello, my name is Fatimah Azzahra and I usually go by Sarah.
Hi guys, my name is Elisabet, but you can call me Lisa.
Hello, my name is Eugenia Christabel, also known as Abel.
Alright, now that we have familiarized ourselves with each other, we will dive into the discussion. So, do you guys know about Sukarno? He's one of, if not, the most important figures in Indonesia. He's the proclamator as well as the first president of Indonesia. Can we have someone to share their thoughts about Sukarno? What about Lisa?
Sukarno has a strong charisma. He has a uniqueness that only fits him. His speaking style is wise but sounds unique when we heard it, and it's really eye-catching for me. It's for me. It's just for me. I don't know what about you guys. And especially when he makes speech and when he write poetry. He can make people, or he can attract many people. That's...
Alright, that is Sukarno as a person. However, that's not going to be the focus of our discussion today. Instead, today we will discuss about Indonesia's foreign policy under Sukarno's administration. While some of the policies in this era may be deemed as problematic by some, such as Indonesia withdrawal from the UN, Indonesia confrontation with Malaysia, and many others. However, let's start with the famous one, that is free and active or bebas aktif policy. So, Fanny, can you please tell us about this policy and what do you think of it?
Bebas aktif policy is one of Sukarno's policies that really shocked the world because of Indonesia's attitude, which may be very different from the other countries that choose to be in the non-aligned movement. Indonesia realized this policy by being free, which means that not to take the sides among two competing blocs in Cold War, while also active in complementing the world peace mission promoted by Sukarno himself. With this action, Sukarno had to aim of making Indonesia more famous and seen by the world as one of the countries that dared to give free movement and remain active in its foreign policy. And for me, the policy issues by Sukarno is very good and has an impact on Indonesia and international world because this policy serves a guideline for Indonesia policymakers in making decisions, so as they remain active in maintaining world peace, as well as to shape the behavior of Indonesia to be the main actor who will remain brave under principle of bebas aktif. Okay.
Lisa?
Yeah. I have been here about bebas aktif policy from Fanny, and that really sounds good. I have a question for you guys. What do you think about the ideology of free and active policy has been a trend from Sukarno era, and it's still there until now? What do you think, guys?
Well, I think the ideology of free and active remains in use from the Sukarno era until now because it remains relevant with Indonesia's national interests. Indonesia's independent and active policy is not a neutral policy, but it is one that does not align Indonesia with the superpowers, nor does it bind the country to any military pact. It is a policy designed to serve the national interest while allowing Indonesia to cooperate with other nations to abolish colonialism and imperialism in all their forms and manifestations for the sake of world peace and social justice. This explains why Indonesia was one of the founding members of non-aligned movement.
Yeah, well, as Hatta once stated, do we Indonesians, in the struggle for the freedom of our people and our country, only have to choose between Russia and America? Is not there any other stand that we can take in the pursuit of our ideals? The government is of the firm opinion that the best policy to adopt is one which does not make us the object of an international conflict. On the contrary, we must remain the subject who reserves the right to decide our own destiny and fight for our own goal, which is independence for the whole of Indonesia. This statement was an indication of the golden mean Indonesia would take in international relations, which later became known as mendayung antara dua karang, or rowing between two reefs. I personally think Indonesia's foreign policy under Sukarno was strongly attached to its past efforts of combating the colonies, such as the principle of bebas aktif. It reflected the country's distrust of any old established forces, or in Sukarno's language, all the false, that was deemed as exploitative. As a result, Indonesia chose to assert its strong position of non-alignment, as being aligned with either bloc implied that the country gave up some of its independence. Alright, the next policy that we will unveil is Indonesia's decision to confront Malaysia, which eventually led to its withdrawal from the UN. We will have Lisa to assist us in this topic.
Good. Thank you. So Sukarno played an important role in the Malaysian confrontation, the conflict between Indonesia and Malaysia in 1963 until 1966. As President of Indonesia, Sukarno officially declared a policy of confrontation as a response to the formation of Malaysia, which he considered a threat to Indonesian interests. Sukarno supported separatist movements in Sarawak and Sabah, Malaysia territories, and provided them with logistical and military support. He also used nationalist and anti-colonial speeches to mobilize Indonesian people's support for confrontation. However, confrontation efforts failed to achieve their goals, and in 1966, Indonesia and Malaysia agreed to end the conflict. The confrontation ended due to international pressure, economic problems facing Indonesia, and political change within the country. But after the confrontation, Indonesians' relation with Western countries, including the United States, worsened. Sukarno felt that Western countries support Malaysia in the conflict. But in 1965, Sukarno decided to leave the UN because he felt that the UN was unfair and unable to protect the interests of third world in countries. That's all.
Okay, but I actually wonder, are there any implications of this action?
Okay, I take a chance to answer. Actually, Sukarno's decision to leave the UN was also related to domestic political upheaval. In 1965, the G30 SPKI accident occurred, which resulted in the downfall of Sukarno and the rise power of the new order regime under Suharto. Sukarno's departure from the UN can be understood as a part of the complex political dynamics at that time. The decision reflected political tensions, nationalism, and dissatisfaction with international policies felt by Sukarno and his regime. After leaving the UN, Indonesia's relation with the Western countries worsened, and the focus Indonesia's foreign policy shifted towards being more supportive of the Middle East and non-aligned countries.
Well, the confrontation with Malaysia, in my opinion, was an effort by Indonesia to showcase a strong position on combating neocolonialism in any of its forms. However, during this era, Indonesia seemed to be stuck on a blame the West rhetoric, as it viewed that so long as the neocolonialism or necolim persists, Indonesia cannot prosper. Okay, moving on to the next policy, we will see another effort by Indonesia in pushing forward its Bebas Active agenda, that is, the Asia-Africa Conference.
In my opinion, the most interesting foreign policy in Sukarno era was the holding of the Asia-Africa Conference in 1995 as one of the initiatives of our first president, President Sukarno. The Asia-Africa Conference was held with the aim of promoting cooperation between Asia and Africa countries in facing political and economic challenge. In this conference, Sukarno emphasized the importance of solidarity between newly independent countries to advance prosperity and overcome colonialism, and show the newly independent country also has a shared voice at the international level. Because as known, many newly independent countries in Asia and Africa experience obstacle in having a significant voice and role at the international level.
So, I heard that this conference has something to do with the non-aligned movement. What do you think?
Yes, it is. Actually, in this conference, the basis of the non-aligned movement was also born. The non-aligned movement itself was a diplomatic initiative that emerged as an alternative for countries that did not want to be involved in military alliances in the Cold War.
Okay, but why did Indonesia choose to participate in the non-aligned movement, even though if at that time Indonesia joined the big countries, Indonesia might have been able to gain close relations with the superpower countries?
Well, the reason why Indonesia participate in the non-aligned movement was because Indonesia want to maintain independence and want to be free from interference from big power countries. Indonesia also participate in non-aligned movement because it aligned and reflective to a free and active foreign policy.
Alright, I see that there is another important event in the Sukarno era, that is the liberation of West Papua. Sarah, can you shed a light on this event and what do you think of it?
Okay, of course. But first of all, to understand how West Papua joined Indonesia, we must examine its history first. In 1961, West Papua, or formerly known as West Irian, became an autonomous region under UN administration, and that happens after the period of the Dutch colonialization. And in the following year, there's a negotiation that took place in Geneva between Indonesia and the Netherlands, with Sukarno playing a key role in that negotiation. And this negotiation resulted in the New York Agreement. And according to this agreement, West Papua was to be handed over to the UN and granted temporary autonomy under the UN supervision for several years. And in 1963, at the end of the transition period, Sukarno drafted and passed the West Irian Unification Law, and claiming the territory as one of the integral part of Indonesia. But this problem didn't stop there, because in 1963 to 1969, Sukarno engaged in a political and diplomatic campaign to gain international recognition of Indonesia's claim to West Papua. And this included the participation in the non-aligned conference and diplomatic efforts at the UN. And finally, at the 1969, the West Papua Plebiscite, or also known as the Act of Free Choice, Penentuan Pendapat Rakyat, was organized in an effort to end tensions between Indonesia and the Netherlands. And although this is controversial, The results show a majority in favor of unification with Indonesia. That's all.
Okay, so we discussed very much topic today, and I think this is the time to sum up our discussion today. So we already delved into several aspects of Indonesia's foreign policy under Sukarno's administration, such as the bebas aktif or free and active policy, which allowed Indonesia to navigate the complexities of the Cold War without having to align with either superpower bloc. Next, we also discussed the confrontational stances taken by Indonesia with Malaysia, which resulted in the country's withdrawal from the UN. Also, the Asia-Africa Conference in 1955, which is initiated by Sukarno, it highlighted the importance of solidarity among newly independent nations, giving birth to the non-aligned movement. Next is the integration of West Papua into Indonesia, which involved a series of diplomatic efforts and the controversial Act of Free Choice in 1969. In a nutshell, Sukarno's foreign policy was all about sticking to independence, fighting against colonialism, and trying to make Indonesia a global player without being steered by the old devils or old established forces. This move left a lasting impression on Indonesia's diplomatic game and paved the way for how it dealt with the world afterward up until now.
Okay, that's all for today's Foreign Policy Podcast, and we're from Group 2 saying goodbye. Thank you for watching. Bye.